They're locking up a mentally stable woman who holds incriminating evidence against some of the world's most powerful people.
Wendy Williams is locked in a room in an assisted living facility in New York.
And they're doing it in broad daylight in front of the entire world.
Wendy Williams, one of the most powerful voices in entertainment, didn't lose her mind. She lost her freedom. And the people who took it? They're still out there, still operating, still collecting checks. So here's the question nobody in Hollywood wants answered. What exactly did Wendy Williams know that was worth locking her away for?
To understand what happened to Wendy, you have to understand how the machine works. Katt Williams has been in Hollywood long enough to see it operate up close. And unlike most people at his level, he never stopped talking about what he saw. In interview after interview, Katt described an entertainment industry built on two currencies: money and compliance. You get offered the money first: roles, contracts, access, women, fame, everything you ever wanted wrapped up in one handshake. But that handshake comes with conditions. Katt said he sat across from Harvey Weinstein, one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood history, and watched him offer up two A-list actresses like they were cards in a deck. Casually, confidently, like it was normal, like this was just how business got done. Katt turned it down. And that's when things got complicated. Because when you say no to the machine doesn't just move on. It makes a note. Katt began losing contracts. His image was attacked. Rumors spread. And then they came for something far more personal than his career. They came for his children. 9 visits from authorities. Allegations of child endangerment against a man who had adopted 7 kids and raised them for 14 years without incident. Think about that. Not 1 accusation, 9. But here's the part nobody stopped to question. Why would someone with that track record suddenly become a danger to the very children he fought to provide for?
For over 2 decades, Wendy Williams ran the most dangerous show on daytime television. Not dangerous because of the ratings. Dangerous because she talked. She named names. She broke codes. She said the quiet parts loud, and millions of people tuned in every single day to hear her do it. She wasn't a rapper. She wasn't an activist. She was a radio host turned TV queen who built an empire on one simple rule: say what everyone else is too afraid to say. And then, almost overnight, she was gone. Diagnosed with dementia, placed in a guardianship, locked inside an assisted living facility in New York where she couldn't receive visitors, couldn't access the internet, and had barely left the building in a month. The official story? Her health had collapsed. But the real story? That's what we're here to unpack. Because around the same time Wendy disappeared, a comedian named Katt Williams was sitting across from interviewers and saying something that made the entire internet stop scrolling. He wasn't just talking about jokes. He was talking about a machine. A system built to reward silence and punish truth. And he said Wendy Williams was one of its most recent victims.
And that's exactly where Wendy Williams' story begins to sound familiar.
Almost identical, actually.
Because Wendy didn't disappear quietly. She disappeared right after an interview.
In 2013, Wendy Williams sat down and did what she always did. She talked. She addressed the growing feminization of hip-hop culture. She spoke about closeted gay men who had always existed in rap, even going back to the 1980s. And then she dropped a name. She revealed that earlier in her career, she had been fired from radio for attempting to expose that Diddy was gay. Not rumor, not gossip. Fired for trying to say it out loud. The response from the industry was immediate. She wasn't celebrated for courage. She wasn't protected as a journalist. She was quietly added to a list. And years later, when her health began to decline in the public eye, the machine was ready with a diagnosis, a guardian, and a facility.
Gone. Just like that.
Diddy's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, eventually went on record. He confirmed what many people already suspected. Diddy didn't just run Bad Boy Records, he ran a chokehold on the entire industry around him. If you crossed him, worked against him, or simply refused to stay quiet, you stopped getting calls. Labels stopped signing you. Venues stopped booking you. Executives stopped returning your emails. Not because you weren't talented, because one phone call had gone out. Gene Deal described it plainly. If Diddy didn't clear you, you didn't work. Not for Bad Boy, not for anyone connected to Bad Boy. And in the mid-2000s, that connection stretched far. Wendy Williams had chosen to speak, and according to Deal, that choice cost her everything. But the strangest part of this story isn't what Diddy allegedly did, it's what happened after. Because the dementia diagnosis that justified removing Wendy from her own life. A new independent medical evaluation found she never had it. No frontal temporal dementia, no condition that would require the level of restriction she was living under. She was being held, legally, medically, institutionally, without the diagnosis that justified holding her. Her own attorney said it plainly. That should be game, set, match. And yet the doors to that facility stayed closed.
Here's where the story shifts from celebrity drama to something much larger. Because Wendy Williams and Katt Williams aren't isolated cases, they fit a pattern. Dave Chappelle fits the same pattern. Dave walked away from what people described as a $50 million deal. Katt Williams says it was far more, closer to $500 million when you factor in what the show was actually generating. Dave had made Comedy Central a fortune, and when the contract renewal came, the offer on the table represented roughly 10% of what he'd actually earned them. When Dave pushed back, the response wasn't negotiation. According to Katt Williams, an executive said to Dave's face, "Your fans will believe you're a crazy crackhead by the time you get home." Dave got on a plane in Los Angeles. By the time he landed in Ohio, the story was already running. A devout Muslim who doesn't eat pork. A man who lives on a farm with his wife and 5 children, far removed from Hollywood. Suddenly painted as a cocaine-addicted runaway who had fled to Africa to get high. Think about how precise that rollout was. It didn't take weeks. It didn't take investigation. It happened in the time it takes to cross the country on a plane. That's not coincidence. That's infrastructure. And this is where Katt Williams connects dots that most people are still refusing to look at directly. Because the same network that silenced Dave Chappelle and Wendy Williams, that network had a name. And that name keeps appearing in the same files, the same flight logs, the same court documents. Jeffrey Epstein. Comment below. Do you think what happened to Wendy Williams was a medical situation or something else entirely?
Katt Williams said it years before any of the federal cases broke.
Back in 2017, almost a decade before Diddy's arrest, before the Epstein file releases, before any of this became mainstream news, Katt sat down and described a supply chain. Epstein sourced access. Weinstein sourced access. They knew what the people at the top of these power structures wanted, and they provided it. That was the transaction. And to keep that transaction running smoothly, you needed 2 things. You needed silence, and you needed doctors. The New York Times spent months digging through the Epstein files and found something that reframes everything we've discussed. Epstein maintained a private network of physicians across the United States. He paid them through donations, equipment gifts, and financial support for their clinics. In exchange, they gave him something invaluable: medical control over the people in his orbit. He decided when women received care. He decided what diagnoses they carried. He controlled when that care got taken away. One example from the files: a young woman suffers a serious head injury on Epstein's island.
Instead of going to a hospital, where there would be records, staff, witnesses, Epstein arranges for a plastic surgeon to meet them in New York. The procedure happens on Epstein's dining room table. 35 stitches. Medical experts who reviewed the case said there was no clinical reason to do this outside a hospital. Better equipment, lower infection risk, more support staff. The only reason to do it privately was to control the narrative around it. Now, bring that back to Wendy Williams. A woman who holds information damaging to powerful people, suddenly diagnosed with a condition that strips her of legal autonomy. Placed under a guardianship that controls where she lives, who she sees, and what medication she takes. And later, independently evaluated and found to not have the condition at all. This isn't paranoia. This is a documented method.
Katt Williams has been dismissed as reckless, loud, unstable. But look at the timeline. Everything he named years ago, Diddy, Epstein, the network of doctors, the industry blacklisting, the manufactured mental health narratives, has since been corroborated by federal investigations, court documents, and FBI file releases. He wasn't ranting, he was reporting. And the people he named weren't random. Jean-Luc Brunel, Epstein's top recruiter, reportedly offered to cooperate with federal investigators. He had a lawyer. He had information. The DOJ never moved on the offer. Brunel was later found dead in a prison cell. The offer died with him. Chris Tucker appeared in photos on Epstein's private jet alongside Bill Clinton. Flight logs placed him on the aircraft. Tucker confirmed the trip publicly, framing it as a humanitarian mission to Africa. Katt Williams had flagged Tucker years before those photos ever surfaced. He called him by a specific name, and then the photos came out. At some point, the pattern stops being coincidence and starts being a system. A system where the artists who comply get protected. The ones who don't get labeled. Crazy, addict, unstable, danger to their children. And the people doing the labeling? They have doctors on speed dial.
Wendy Williams is still in that facility. The diagnosis that put her there has been medically challenged. The man she first exposed is now facing federal charges, and the network that allegedly operated around him is still largely intact. Katt Williams said something that cuts through all of it. He said he goes into these spaces, gets the information, and runs back to tell people what he found. But he doesn't know how many more times he'll be able to do it. That's not the punchline of a joke. That's a warning. So here's the question worth sitting with. If the same tools used to silence artists, the diagnoses, the guardianships, the manufactured scandals, are the same tools documented in the Epstein files, and if the people who spoke earliest are the ones who suffered most, what does it take before we stop calling the messengers crazy and start asking who benefits from us believing they are? If this story matters to you, subscribe and stay close. These files are still being unsealed. These cases are still unfolding. And the names aren't done coming out.